So, The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan is, I feel like I say this about a lot of books that I review on this channel, but it genuinely is, and I think I said it in one of my other reviews too, it genuinely is one of those books that like I would just pick it up and walk around the bookstore with it and just imagine taking it home. And I think I read the first chapter like a couple times in the store. And it was one of those books that I always knew that eventually I wanted to read and just never pulled the trigger. But my good buddy Corbin was kind enough to send it to me. So basically, as soon as I finished Howling Dark last month, I jumped straight into The Justice of Kings. And then work. Work always happens. So this video is actually coming out like 2 weeks later than I really wanted it to, but better late than never, you know? So anyway, I'm super stoked to finally get to talk about The Justice of Kings. This will be a spoiler-free video. I think that I kind of want to just keep it pretty brief and concise, but I do have a lot of things to say about this book, and most notably that it's really good. I was trying to figure out how to explain it best, and I think that it's kind of like if you were to mix, like, I know everybody says if you take Game of Thrones and then you mix it with X, you get this, as just like a blanket statement for fantasy. And so it feels really cliche saying that, but it's like if you took like Game of Thrones and then mixed it with like Judge Dredd and then sprinkled in a little bit of like Law and Order, I guess. that would be this book. The Game of Thrones comparison really comes more not even from like the grim darkness of this book, because I don't know that I would even say that this book is grim dark. I would just say that it comes more with like the politicking and just the general world building. It's, you know, probably not as deep as Martin's world, at least yet, but it definitely has some of the same flavor to it. It's very, I don't even know if Germanic is the right word. I feel like that's the wrong word. It's just very different. The names, I'm like just staring at the list of characters that I have over here. I've started trying to do that. I've started trying to list out the characters so that I don't forget people, because I feel like I'll review a book and then I will go to edit the video and I'll be like, crap, I forgot to talk about Steve, you know, Steve's important. So I'm trying to list out the characters over here, and I'm already a little nervous about pronouncing some of them. And just that whole general flavor, the whole flavor of the world is very cool. And I've even talking to some other people, I've heard that for a lot of people, the world building was their favorite part of this book. It is very much like kind of a law thriller. So basically, the back of the book kind of gives you a taste of what a justice is, but in this world, a justice is basically like a traveling judge, jury, and executioner for this new empire. I think that the empire has only been around for like 50 or 60 years or something. I could be completely wrong in that I don't remember that length of time for how long. It's a young empire in the grand scheme of the world. And these justices go out and enforce the emperor's justice, basically. So especially in like places that are away from civilization, they'll travel in these places where there's not more courts or more established means of practicing law, and they will go out and practice law. They'll hear cases, they'll have trials, and basically they get to just make the decision. They are supposed to be just so highly versed in the law that there is no questioning their judgment. And their power also comes from this idea that they are second only to the emperor. They speak for the emperor himself. So that take on world building was super interesting to me. I don't think that I've ever read a book that was so heavily emphasizing the law of the land as being important, or like just the narrative point of the book is built around the idea that this kingdom highly values its justice system, which is so weird. Usually I feel like I'm talking about magic systems, but not justice systems. But we'll talk about justice systems a little bit for this book because it's really important. It's central. So going into this book, I don't like normally read into books a lot. So or like read about them a lot. Like I'll usually get just one kind of general idea of what a book is about. And if it sounds like something I would like, then I want to read it because I want to know the very least I can about a book before I read it, unless it's like pre-established in a series that I already have read some of, like, for example, like Stormlight 5 stuff. I love fan theories and, you know, any little thing that Sanderson wants to sprinkle out for us. I love that kind of stuff. But if it's for a new series from an author that I have never read before, generally I want to go into it as blind as possible. Other than people saying that this book was good, I didn't know anything about it. And then just like based on the cover of it and based on the synopsis of it, I thought that it was going to be kind of a multi-POV, but really, this is just like the year of first-person chronicle books for me. Between the Farseer trilogy and the Sun Eater read-along that's going on right now, and then The Name of the Wind, which I have not DNF'd, I have shelved. I've kind of pushed it off to the side, and I want to come back to that one whenever I can just focus on it, and I'm not reading a bunch of other big series right now. So I'm reading a lot of these first-person chronicle style books. Whenever that's what this turned out to be, the book is from the perspective of Helena Sadanka. Sadanka, I think that's how... We're just gonna roll with it. I'm gonna stick it. We're gonna roll with it. Helena Sadanka, who is Sir Conrad von Volt's, who is Sir...
The lime is baked in a buttery, flaky crust.
Baked in a buttery, flavored crust. Yeah.
Who is Justice Conrad von Volt's clerk. Basically, he took her on as his apprentice. And so you're kind of getting her perspective on this man who is, as we come to find out, a very prolific and important. He's important. He's an important man. So Helena, I liked her a lot. Justice von Volt is a very interesting character. I would say I like that we got more complexity with him as we went along. At the beginning of the book, he feels very one note, maybe, just that we don't see past the shell of his job. He kind of is just he's a by the books lawyer, essentially. But as the plot thickens and the narrative develops, his complexity develops, and he is a very interesting and compelling character. And at the end of the book, I was happy that we got the perspective that we did. I think that there might be some people who would read this book and say, Von Volt's a more interesting character. I feel like I would rather have his perspective. And I disagree with that. I think that Helena was the right choice in perspective. I always think it's interesting to see events from somebody who is not like the traditional hero type, which is what Von Volt kind of is. You read this book and you kind of say like, okay, well, maybe in any other fantasy novel, Von Volt would be the main character. He would be the perspective character. He would be, you know, the person that we follow because he kind of has a lot of those like main character personality traits. Seeing it through Helena's perspective, makes the weight of some of the things that he's doing more grand, because since she has this kind of built up idea of who he is, we kind of get that built up idea of who he is. And so whenever he does something incredible or mysterious, or he practices the law, or, you know, however it functions, it is always with a sense of awe through her eyes. Well, maybe not always, but like the more grand things that happen. And that's what I would say is also interesting about the kind of just the world building approach and the storytelling approach to this, is that it's not, these justices are not necessarily just like only executioners. Like, it's not like that their whole job is to just go out and find, like, to just be like hunter killers, you know, like bounty hunters, basically, like that go and hunt down people and execute them and whatnot. Like, that is part of their job. They do some of that, but they also handle like mundane tasks and mundane grievances between people and land disputes and, you know, like the kinds of things that like lawyers would handle. They literally will sit down and set up a table and just roll through paperwork. He just thought about it so much. There's so much like detail to the laws of this world, and it's so cool. It's really cool. There are other characters who are important to the plot, namely, you know, like with this being a murder investigation, there are, you know, suspects, there are victims, there are people who are relevant in that way. I'm not going to talk about any of them, especially because with this being a mystery, it's important for you as the reader to go in not knowing who to trust, not knowing who is involved in what way. And I think that that's valuable and important. So I think the last person that I'm going to talk about is, his is one of the names that I was like worried about pronouncing. I think it's Dubine Bressinger is how you say it, who is kind of Von Volt's like right-hand man. He's kind of his muscle, really. Von Volt is very much a skilled swordsman. swordsman, you kind of get that up front. Dubine kind of handles a lot of just the muscle. If, you know, somebody needs to be chased down and dragged back, Dubine's the guy for it. He handles a lot more of maybe the clandestine side of the work, where, you know, a justice is a prominent, recognizable, often feared member of the justice system. Dubine kind of gives Von Vault the ability to like go places more secretively. I feel like that's a poor way of explaining. He's more than that. He's, you know, they were also friends beforehand, Dubine and Von Vault. So Von Vault kind of hires Dubine to keep him around. He's kind of just a gopher. He's like, anything that Von Vault needs, Dubine's the guy to handle it. Dubine is probably a more initially complex character. He kind of is haunted by some of the things in his past that are later revealed to us, but he also very much throughout the majority of the book is kind of just the muscle. he gets some personality, he gets some time to develop, but of the three of our main people, Helena, Dubine, and Von Vault, Dubine probably gets the least amount of development. There is development there, he does have some depth, but he's probably the least of the three. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is the magic system, because there is magic in this world, and it is very mysterious and shrouded in mystery. It's tied into the world building really well. So basically, the justices have access to this power that's called the voice of the emperor. They are able to compel someone to tell the truth as they see it. So they're able to use this to pull confessions from people by imbuing their voice with magic, by imbuing their voice with the emperor's voice. The more evidence that they have against the person, the more that the person doesn't suspect, hasn't been built up their mental fortitude against it, the more powerful the voice is. So, you know, they could say, you know, who killed so-and-so? And if they're using the voice and the person is feeble-minded and not expecting it, and they have a lot of evidence compelled to it, that person would just magically be compelled to answer that question. And so it's powerful, but it also takes a toll on the person who uses it and the person that it's used on. So that's a really interesting magical ability. And then the other is necromancy. So these justices also have the power to briefly talk with the deceased, which I think is so cool. Like, it's such a cool ability for a like investigator type person to have. The D&D nerd in me was immediately thinking like, this is the Speak with the Dead spell in Dungeons and Dragons. It's cool, and it's not gimmicky or cheap. You feel the effects of it in the book. One of my favorite scenes in the book happens by them speaking to the dead, and it kind of peels back the curtain a little bit, that there's more going on than just the material world, and there's a lot of world building and development that has gone into this. And so for this being the first thing that I've ever read by Richard Swan, for this being the first book in this series, I'm very, very excited to see where this goes. I think he's set up a really cool world. The book ends on an interesting note. There's a lot of politics involved, a lot of the law involved, and a lot of mystical, magical things kind of happening in the background. And so it's very, very good. I highly recommend it. If you haven't picked it up yet, you really should. If you're new here, be sure to like and subscribe, turn the bell on. I try to do reviews fairly often and community tags and stuff like that. And so if that's something that you're interested in, be sure to like and subscribe on the video down below, and then comment if you have read The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan and what you thought of it. And I think that that's all I've got for this one. So I'll catch you in the next one.